Ha!
No,
Yes, I'm serious.
You are tuned to a live edition of Realities, the Kitchen Table Conversations. Now here's your host, Mark Fonseca Renero.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Kitchen Table Conversations on Realities podcast. I'm your host, Mark Fonseca Rendeiro. And what are we all doing here? Well, first of all, the thing I love about podcasting is getting to learn things about the world, especially the stuff we rarely hear about for whatever reason, because it's not in our news feed, that whole place where you get your information. And so, in that spirit, I invite friends of friends, acquaintances, maybe even people I've never met before, that's possible, to the kitchen table here in Amsterdam. We do it in English, although we speak many languages, and we hope to reach you wherever you are. Today at the table, we're talking about the leg bank, which is about prosthetics, but also it's about Colombia today and getting affordable prosthetics to people who perhaps are themselves on a fixed or limited income. And to do this properly, I have from the leg bank, Merel Rumping and Susana Herrera. And to help me with the interview, I always like to bring a friend along who has a great mind for observing the world, a journalist in her own right. Marieke Buijs is also here. Hello, everyone.
Hello.
Hi.
Once upon a time, there was Merel, and she was traveling. Is this often how the story starts?
Yeah, kind of.
I mean, I knew you as a citizen of the world, whether it was Tunisia or Portugal or France, where you were once a student. You were always somewhere and you were learning about what's going on there, cultures. I knew also your love of music. But so at some point, what are we talking? A few years ago, you find yourself in Colombia. And I want to go back to that because ultimately I want to get to your project that you're working on today. But I feel like to understand that, a plane goes overhead. We have to go back to what was going on in your life and then connect it with what was going on, in this case, in Colombia.
Yeah. So then we have to go back a couple of years, basically in 2003, I think, 2004. It was the year when I first traveled to Colombia. And I wanted to work with street children. So I actually set up a theater play with them. Mm-hmm. And it was pretty tough. They would often sleep in the streets and have pretty, sometimes violent lives. And then actually a couple of years later, I went back to work for a microfinance institute. So we would lend money to people that wanted to improve their business, their existing business. So I actually help companies or social enterprises to grow. Mm-hmm. And I think because I was very often walking around in these very poor neighborhoods, I noticed there were many people that didn't have access to good prosthetics. And I think that's where the seed was planted for leg bank.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so when you, in the context of Colombia, you're there, you're seeing what's going on. What is the first step that you do when you, is it when you get back to the Netherlands? And what was that step?
Yeah, so a lot of things happened in between. I actually, I first wanted to become a diplomat. So I started working in the embassy in Morocco.
Yeah,
and that was a lot of fun. But I noticed that it was a bit difficult to really change things if you're a diplomat. So then I thought about my experiences in the La Cooperación Mundial de la Mujer, so the microfinance institute I worked for, mm-hmm. And I really liked the idea of social entrepreneurship, that you can help people, sometimes get a better life or get more opportunities through in a very equal way by social enterprising.
Yeah.
So the first step was that I started to work for Proportion, which is a social enterprise that we both work for, Susana and I. And it develops social enterprises around the world. So we work in Colombia and in Kenya and in Bangladesh. And when I started to work there, we had a small business, a water business in Bangladesh, and we were working in Kenya. And then I thought, hey, wouldn't it be nice if we can maybe set up a social enterprise in Colombia that tackles exactly this problem, that there's many people around the world, especially in rural areas, poor amputees, basically, that do not have good access to orthopedic care.
Yeah, can you describe what life is like for people living in Colombia? Without prosthetics.
Well, I think maybe I can explain it by sharing a story of Jair. It's someone that we met in the really, really far area. So if you have to take 2 airplanes, and then still you have to drive for 5 hours. Mm-hmm. And he's a farmer, but he has 1 leg. And because when he was young, he was recruited by the rebels and actually by the paramilitary forces, and he had to fight for them. And then he stepped on a landmine, and he lost his leg. And he's he's very active and a very optimistic person. But since he's a farmer, it's really hard for him to work, basically. I mean, he's doing it with his crutches.
Yeah.
So he's kind of helping himself out, but it's just very complex.
Yeah, because I guess then you can't use your arms.
Yeah, so
that you would want to.
Exactly, because he's doing everything. So he's also good in hopping around on 1 leg, but he's just not as efficient and independent as he would like to be. And he lives, I had to walk from the road. I had to walk even 1 hour. I have to say, I was walking there thinking, so this guy lost his leg, only green fields, where exactly did that happen? So, and then after 1 hour walking, like with rocks and stuff, then finally I would end up in his house. So you can imagine it's really difficult. I mean, he's doing a good job, but it's I think it could be better if he would have his leg. And he did have a prosthesis, but because he lives so far away from the main urban areas, and now he said, my body changed a bit, because actually the stump, the limb, the residual limb, it changes every day, funnily. And after 2 years or 3 years, the change is so big that the prosthesis doesn't fit anymore. Yeah. So he needs to change it, but it's so far traveling, and that he feels a bit stuck there. Yeah.
Okay.
And Susana, by all means, tell us a little about yourself. For the people at home, I haven't met Susana until today, so part of this is also getting to know a new friend, I think. But by all means, wherever you want to begin.
Well, I would say it will have to be with leg bang. That's how I connected with Merel. So, I'm Colombian. I'm an industrial designer, and I moved to Netherlands almost 4 years ago to do my master at TU Delft. And by 2 years ago, I was looking for a graduation project. Mm-hmm. So I needed to write my thesis, and I found in proportion the opportunity to work in a project in Colombia. So I thought, okay, this is great. I can apply everything that I've learned in the last 2 years in Colombia. I may go back to visit my family as well. So it was like the perfect opportunity. And it's been 2 years now. I graduated from TU. Then I continued working for Legbank, as an intern. And then it's been, it's a year now since I'm working on it on a full-time basis. Mm-hmm. So basically what I do is that since I'm an industrial designer, I use design research methods to get a lot of information and input from the field. So I talk directly with doctors, with patients, with governmental offices, and then we use all that information to create, to develop the concept we wanted to create, and also the business model behind it. Mm-hmm. So,
I'm fascinated by the whole aspect of course, it's a project for, in this case, Colombia, and then how you engage with people on the ground there. And there's one piece of it, as you just brought up. For the people watching on the Facebook Live, the audio wasn't working for the first few seconds, which was a matter of the classic plugging and unplugging strategy, which, yeah. So if you're just catching up, one, you can actually listen to the podcast, which is realitiesPodcast.com when it comes out. But in the meantime, we're speaking about the leg bank, which is a project for prosthesis. Is that the plural? Prosthesis?
Yeah.
Prosthetics?
Yeah, prosthetics or
is the thing.
prosthesis with an E works also.
Yeah. Prosthetics. I think my New Jerseyan, you can help me out, my New Jerseyans, we would always just say prosthetics. In this case, in Colombia, although we're going to look more to the rest of the world, I think, as well as we talk. I had a look because I was Googling around to learn more, and I ran into a post from a design company called, I think, Coq & Coq, and they had this... the actual prosthesis, which I've seen you present, I think, at some point on a YouTube video. Because, okay, we have prosthetic limbs in this world. Some people know a little bit about them. I know a lot of what Hollywood has taught me, which is not much, right? And we also occasionally get a science story that says, they're getting more advanced in terms of what they do. I mean, options. And advanced, perhaps, hopefully, in terms of the fitting element, the comfort, the ease of use. You find yourself, as you've explained here at the beginning of the program, wanting to bring affordable prosthetics to in this case, to Colombia. But then there's the question of the actual design, right? I mean, designs are out there, but you didn't go with an existing design that was out there, as far as I understand.
So basically what happened, you just asked me for what was the first step. Well, the first step was that we actually, Proportion teamed up with a team from the TU Delft, which was actually before I met Susana, so in 2014. And we start first investigating all the current challenges that the prosthetic industry faces and people face that need prosthetics. So, and we understood that one of the main problems is on the product level, the fitting of the socket to the limb.
Yeah.
Because if it doesn't fit well, then you walk with pain. So, like I just explained the example of Jair. So, people in some point they abandon their prosthesis. So that's what you want to prevent. So that's on the product level. On the system level, there's the access. So it's very centralized system. So only in the main urban areas, main cities, basically, you have often orthopedic clinics, and in the rural areas, there's nothing. So we wanted to come up with a solution that addresses both problems. So to start with the socket first, on the product. So the biggest problem is not that there's not affordable prosthetics in the world, but it's that the socket doesn't fit. And if you see worldwide in upcoming economies, only 25% of them has orthopedic training programs. So you can imagine, since this is a handmade process to make the socket fit to the limb, that if you don't have a lot of skills, then automatically it often doesn't really fit. Yeah. So we start to think about, isn't there something out there that can create in an automated way a good socket? Because if you check, we knew there were many amputees, there's 30 million disabled people in the world, so we thought, should we focus on hands or feet or whatever? Yeah. But we understood that 50% of the people that miss a limb is actually below the knee. So we started to look for that kind of opportunities. And then we came across Marieke Buijs, which is a professor from the Strathclyde University in Glasgow. Mm-hmm. And he had developed the Magicast, which is a tool. Yeah, Magi means water in Swahili. And that's where he invented it when he was in Tanzania. And basically you cast helped by the pressure of water. So it's a closed water tank. It looks like a big cylinder, and it has a big membrane in it. So you put bandage around the limb of a patient, and the patient inserts the limb and then puts the full body weight on it, and then the plaster gets hard in. And because the pressure comes from all the sides, and we have a patented element in it, which is a soft tissue control mechanism. It basically makes sure that the soft tissue, which is this thing, doesn't move. It kind of keeps it on the right place. That's how it works. Yeah.
By the way, I mean, not that I don't completely believe in first try gets it right, but how has it been? This particular design has been being used for how long?
Well, I think he started developing it already in 2005. Is kind of the idea.
Oh, right. Okay.
Then,
And then right.
well, then he only used it in scientific settings, but he never really made it into a commercial product. So it was really in a very basic idea at that moment. And then, we brought together an engineering agency and an orthopedic clinic that we actually use and involve them to test the product. So by bringing all these organizations together, then we had a team.
Yeah.
Because you knew it looked promising and you wanted to see if it was possible to really use it in real world situations, or what were the questions that were still, because it sounds so ingenious, this mechanism using water pressure rather than people to measure the limb. So what were you still wondering?
Well, one of the problems, basically the whole idea of watercasting, it was invented already in the 60s, but it's like with a glass of water. If you put in a balloon, then you will feel that it wants to get out, right? There's pressure coming from below. So what would happen with all these casts that would come out is that they were a bit wide and a bit short. So we had to come up with a mechanism to control the soft tissue, they call this pistoning, to prevent this from happening.
Skin and muscle tissue.
Yeah, this tissue. Yeah. So we had to make sure that it would stay in place. And to create this thing, that was really difficult. And that's also why we had to work with an engineering agency that has created many medical devices before. Yeah. So, yeah.
But if I may add to that, so among the different possibilities, like the different ways you can use or methods you can use to create this kind of molds of the residual limb, one of the attractive things about the Magicas was that, for example, it was especially designed for like low resource context. So what that means is that it is a really simple tool that is really easy to learn how to use it, to adapt it in the current process. And so maybe the production of this socket, it wouldn't depend so much on the skills of the person doing it, but it will be assisted by the technology. Yeah. So that was something that was really important if we were thinking about working in rural areas. So that would also help us decentralize the production of prostheses, and that is exactly what we wanted to do. So we knew that in all main cities there were orthopedic clinics. Yeah. But in the rural area, there was none. So if we would put this device in a rural area, then we will help bringing those services closer to the rural amputees.
Yeah, so it needs to be easy to use.
Exactly. So
maintain.
So then those were also the reasons why we decided to continue. Well, they decided to continue working with the Magicas because it actually fitted to the situation we were looking in Colombia. And that was also the situation that you can see in different countries. So, for example, we've been looking at the moment at Kenya, we've been looking at Uganda, we've been looking at also Bangladesh, and the situation is pretty much similar. So there are clinics in the main cities. In the rural areas, there's nothing available. So then if we would use such a technology, we would be able then to bring these services outside, to increase the reach of these services.
And I guess living in Holland, I'm like, the rural areas are an hour away. But I guess in countries like Colombia, it saves days of travel. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And even in the Netherlands, we work this way, actually. There is small orthopedic centers. They take the molds and they send it to the main manufacturing workshop. Okay. So there's orthopedic centers that work that way. Yeah. So it's pretty common, but it's still not really happening in many upcoming economies.
What I think is also cool is that you're engaging with medical students or current doctors, but future doctors also in Colombia, right? Who are also involved.
Yeah, the SENA students. Yeah, so there is since 2 years, there's a school in Bogota where they teach people how to make prosthetics. And we met together with 12 students that were all former military that lost their limb or had some physical disability. And they were actually offered a position as a clinician. So really, really nice. Yeah. And so we're trying to see if it would be possible to encourage one of them to start their own lab, for instance, in a rural area, to pilots. Like, how would it be possible to create a sustainable business around prosthetics in a rural area?
Yeah. So I was wondering, are you still in this phase of seeing if it's possible, trying to see how it would work, or are you already convinced that it does work and making the prosthetics and...
Yeah, I think it depends on what. For the product, we know it works because there's people walking it. Yeah, but on the decentralization model, we're still developing it.
Yeah.
So for the product, there's people in Colombia and people in the Netherlands as well walking on our prosthesis. There's meneer Versluis, who walks on his clogs in Amuiden.
Wow.
Amuiden. And he even climbs trees. So he actually climbs ladders in trees. Yeah, we're making a movie about him. It's really special. So we know that the product has, it's there. But for the decentralization model, we're still doing it. Maybe you can add something.
Yeah, so what I would say is, what we would like to check is just that if you look at the way these clinics are set up, they don't only make prosthetics. They only offer different other services. So they sell orthotics, they sell wheelchairs, canes, walkers. So that is exactly what we're looking at. So we know the technology we're developing will help us to decentralize, but we want these small, let's call them points of care, to be sustainable. So what we need to check now is what is the setup of that point of care in a rural area, because maybe prosthetics may not be enough. So then what other services and products we need to add? And also because since we're talking about rural people, most of the time they have low income. So we need to think about also what would be the financial model for them. Because in Colombia is a special case, as many other countries, but it's special because the government may also finance prosthetics for them. But that is not always the case and may not be for everyone. So what happens to the people who still need prosthetics but cannot pay for it? So that's why we were also thinking what would be then the business model to help these people getting access to finance to pay for these prosthetics when they don't have an insurance. And we also need to take care that it is sustainable, that we can provide services for enough people that it is then sustainable for this entrepreneur, the SENA students we were talking about before, to set up a lab in a rural area. So that's why that's still in development.
Because can you give an estimate of the cost of one of the prosthetics and how that relates to an income of a farmer in Colombia?
So let's say a prosthetic, really the most simple prosthetic can be like 500 euros.
So the lower leg prosthetic.
Really simple, and it may be for someone who like an elderly person who may just need to walk to the grocery store or to the church, and then the rest of the time he's at home. So really, really simple. And then if you would compare it to the income, how much it would be? Like if it's
like 2 months' salaries.
Yeah.
Minimum, even almost 2.5, I would say.
Yeah.
So the thing is with prosthetic and the prices, there's like several levels. So level 1 is what she said. It's someone that doesn't really move, only in the house. But if you are someone that likes to run, for instance, you need something more expensive because it's way more advanced.
Yeah.
So that
or if you're working on your
exactly. If you are on the working, let's say 35, and you go to work on a motorcycle, and then you need to be standing the whole day, and then you want to go to the park to play with your kids, then you need something more complex. And then the price goes up drastically. So it can be 2,000 euros up. And as much as you want to pay, as you can, or you want to pay for it. So that is the problem as well.
Yeah.
Within this larger issue, something that I always come back to, and I don't know how much you guys will have to say about it, but from what I've understood, a lot of the causes behind, in Colombia, for example, behind the loss of limbs is landmines. Yeah, and it seems like, worldwide, that's still one of the major sources of why people get into this situation.
So basically. When I thought about initiating leg bank, one of the reasons was I was touched by the landmine problem. But if you, of course, by researching further and deeper the problem, then I actually understood that the biggest cause is diabetes, even in Colombia. So then the second cause is motorcycle accidents. I think there's every day there's people dying in Colombia because of the it's crazy.
Traffic.
I always actually drove it, or I was always on it, so nothing ever happened. I'm happy about that, but it's really risky. So that would be the second cause, and then the third cause would be in the work. So work-related accidents, and then one of the fourth or fifth is more like the landmines.
Yeah.
But still, it is a big amount of people. If you check worldwide, in Colombia, there's a big amount of victims. Because, of course, 50 years of war, I mean,
Right.
that leads up to a big amount.
Yeah. And there's there's always, I don't know what's going on specifically in Colombia, but there's always one military unit in charge of removing landmines, and they're the least funded and the slowest, in terms of progress, if there is any at all. So
there's like many
left over.
Yeah, there's still some left, but fortunately there's organizations that are really working on it.
Yeah.
And, so that's the good thing.
It was always, I've done a little bit of work in Afghanistan, and on a good weekend day, you could go hiking. Well, you could go hiking. And every now and then, you'd run into a unit, 3 people, with some kind of uniforms, and then they were doing the mine removal or mine looking for mines. Yeah. So this has sort of left impression on me that these units are often, there's not enough of them, of course, because who's investing a lot in mine removal.
But I think lately in Colombia, the situation may change because after the sign of the peace treaty, there is a lot of in money, like international resources coming in Colombia, also to fund this demining process. And I think there's also even an NGO created by the FARC to help demine and accelerate the demining process. So I cannot recall the year, but they were thinking that maybe in 5 to 10 years time, the country would be cleared of landmines. So that is moving a bit faster now, or let's hope it moves faster now with everything that is happening. Yeah.
And the Netherlands is also contributing to it financially. They're collaborating with Halo, I think. Yeah, that's I think what the ambassador told us. And then they are also, demining.
Yeah.
So you would maybe then if before we would think like if this would then continue, then like the level of amputations would reduce, but actually that's not really the case since diabetes is still the main cause of
on a rise.
So that's why creating solutions in this field is still really relevant and is still really important.
Also, because in the Netherlands, diabetes patients, they may get an amputation at really late age. But in Colombia, it's also people that are in their 40s, basically. So often it's really cheaper to do the amputation, and it's safer than doing a treatment. But I think one of the reasons is also money. So we spoke with the people from the diabetes organization in Colombia, and they told us, look, 80% of the amputations could have been prevented. We're like, what?
Yeah.
It's insane, if you think about it. So
I'm really curious about this Mr. Buijs, who shares my last name. But,
true. But he is in the Netherlands right now.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
But I can imagine for him it must be so, special to see something he's been working on in a scientific setting to be really used to its potential somewhere else because you put the effort into that.
Yeah, he's really excited about it. I would see it's like his baby, of course.
Yeah.
So, it was really nice to be with him in Colombia and also to do a big demonstration to over 25 clinicians that were in the beginning like, we're not interested because actually, of course, they studied many years and they have 25 years of experience. Their hands know what they're doing. And then there's some person telling them, look, but a small part of the process actually can be done in an automated way. Yeah. So some of them were like not even watching. But at some point they were like, this is actually interesting. So you saw from not interested to like even filming and people getting really excited about it. So I think that was something he was also really happy with.
Yeah. Yeah, and so I understand that it's a lot cheaper to do it this way, in this automated way with the Watercast. But would that also be a solution for just reducing the costs of healthcare in countries that have a lot of proper insurance and people that can afford prosthetics?
Yeah, so it's cheaper because the patient doesn't need to travel back and forth to do changes because the fitting is like right in the beginning. Yeah. That's what we aim for. That's what we've seen so far. But in the end, you're still working with plaster. So when it comes to material cost, it's not cheaper. But so it's cheaper in human hours. So you can do it way faster. It's like standing you're out, and basically within 1 hour you have your mold. So it's really fast. But it's not that it's like saving costs in out of pocket costs, like material costs.
But then, it could be It is the case that the prosthetics may be cheaper, but that doesn't necessarily mean that they will be cheaper for the patients. Because that's the fact, right? So if this device will help you make your process faster, hence cheaper, but then that doesn't mean that you will get then the prosthetic cheaper at the end. There may be more margins for the prosthetic maker. I mean, it's as simple as that. So you could do different things. So for one of the possibilities we were thinking was that we can involve the government in this. We can prove that it is possible to make prosthetics cheaper. So then insurances ask the prosthesis makers to reduce the prices. So then, to do it like that way. But then, that is like a really long shot, you know. It's also complex and it may take time. So one of the things we realized that the Magicast as a device itself, if you don't think about so that the benefits for the patient may not be immediately transferred to them. So
except for the fits.
Yeah, of course.
And
I
fast,
mean, I'm talking about
on the cost basis.
On the cost part. Yeah. That's when we thought, okay, maybe also we can increase our social impact if we would think about this decentralizing the services, because that's something that will impact also on the patient, because for example, they need to pay, some of them need to pay all their transport cost to go to the next city. That may be, let's say, 8 to 1 day, like the distance they need to cover. Then you will need to pay for a hotel, for example. Then you will have to pay for the food all the time you're there. So those are a lot of costs that we could help the patient to save on if the Magicas would be closer to them. So that's why we decided we wanted to keep working on both tracks, because if we help the patient with the product in increased like comfort and fit, but not really on the price part, maybe with the services we could actually do it.
So in terms of outreach, I mean, that's the part that I see a lot as a friend of yours, and then watching what's going on. I don't know if it's called outreach or anything related to the public face, the presentations, interviews. It seems like in the last year, it's been going quite well. I mean, people want to talk about this and to you, and
Yeah, I can say 30 articles written in 1 year. I think even more. I don't know how many radio interviews and even on television. So, when it comes to communication outings, I think we've had a lot of exposure. Yeah.
I mean, based on the questions you get asked, do you understand what is it that I mean, especially in a world where it's so hard to catch the attention of media, or hold the attention of media, perhaps. What gets them?
I would say it's a combination of products and a system that can bring it to the people who need it. So often it's just a product or it's a system, but we have the combination. And I think it's like a multidisciplinary team. So we have the business developers, we have the engineers, we have the people that work in the orthopedic industry, and we have the scientists. And it's sometimes really complex to work in a team. They're all around the world, and they all have sometimes different views. You know, we should continue testing. You know, it's like the research kind of view, and then the engineers like it should have been done yesterday. So, I think that's one of the things, maybe.
Yeah, for sure. I was just thinking that it may be also the case that, like the whole subject of disability and has been always related to like charity. So the way of approaching the disability and let's say prosthetics issue from a social business perspective is also something that is intriguing. Because a lot of NGOs are trying to do that anyway. I mean, the money or the resources available for NGOs every time is less. So NGOs are forced to think, okay, how we can continue doing what we want to do in a more sustainable way. So they are trying to turn into social businesses. So that's also what we're trying to do. And I think that also makes it appealing or interesting. Yeah.
Is that something you really believe in, a social business model for making the world a better place as opposed to charity?
Well, I do. I mean, maybe Miro has more experience in social entrepreneurship. For me, working at Legbank was my first experience, and for me, it's absolutely clear. I mean, I don't see any other way to make to increase the reach. I mean, to increase the impact. It cannot rely solely on charity. It has to be sustainable. So it has to be through social. Yeah, like a social entrepreneurship.
And by sustainable, you mean someone needs to actually want it and want to pay for it.
Yeah, I mean, and if that's the case, then you need to facilitate the means that will allow the person to access this thing. So that's why we were thinking, okay, actually that we haven't really mentioned it, but that's actually the whole Legbank name came. Oh, yeah. Yeah, that's how it came up. Yeah, maybe you want to explain it.
Yeah. The very first idea was to, because of course I have my experience in microfinancing. Yeah. So I thought maybe I thought in the beginning it's all about money. It's too expensive. So maybe there's a place that people can come and lease their leg, take it home, and then just pay a monthly installment. And what Susana says, it's the only way to scale. If you're just doing charity, or if you're doing charity, then it's really hard to impact a bigger geographical area.
Yeah, I was trying to come up with a title for this show when I put it out, and I was like, something with the bank, the nicest bank you'll ever hear about, or no, I just couldn't do it in the moment anyway. This whole element of, it's a name, but it's also it has some meaning to it, or
it's about financial sustainability. Yeah. Which is always anyway pretty difficult when it comes to care, because there's always more need than there's money. Yeah. So that's what makes it also intriguing and interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think there are a lot of things that can be done, and thus we are still exploring different things. But what I think it's a fact is, if people would get better access to prosthetics and also better prosthetics, then their quality of life would be increased. Their self-esteem would be increased. They will have higher opportunities to get a job. So, for example, I met this lady in Colombia, and I remember she was trying to get a job. She went to an interview, but then the employer said, but I wouldn't feel comfortable asking you to do this task. It was mainly cleaning because you don't have a leg. So he would feel sorry for her, and she replied please don't feel sorry for me. Just give me a job so I can feed my kids. Yeah. I mean, and she didn't get the job at the end. So if you would help people into get a better access to jobs, then for them it would be easier to get to pay back, for example. But then you also need to think that in rural areas, maybe there are not so many job opportunities. So all these initiatives always need to be connected to some other things. It has to be bigger. So that's also part of what makes it complex, but also really makes it really interesting. And also that's why people see they can connect to us. So we've been talking with a lot of different types of organizations that are already in the field. Yeah. So we cannot do everything by ourselves. We need to work with people that are already there and can help us in create that environment, or I don't know, that system, so the people are really able to get a job and then have a better life. Yeah.
Yeah, because that's, of course, the ultimate goal is social inclusion for people, and that they can fully participate in a society. Yeah. But that's something that's for us, that's what we're working towards, but it's for us hard to measure.
It's a bigger, longer, slower process. Though you do remind me of what an interesting time it is, especially in Colombia, with the onset of a peace agreement, and I mean, obviously things are changing all the time, but it seems like the next 10 to 20 years are going to be special. Especially, that's too many of those words. But when it comes to initiatives that connect with what you're doing, and even, if I go back to my obsession now with health, there could already be organizations that are in Colombia going, we need to improve this whole thing, fight diabetes. We need to talk about healthy eating. We need to talk about sugar and so forth. And you could all be in the same ecosystem. Anyway.
Yeah. I think that's also, social entrepreneurs don't see similar organizations as competitors, but as people they can collaborate with. So it's also a different kind of mindset. Yeah. Than maybe business as usual. Or
Yeah, and it sounds like the business aspect of it really forces you to take all these context factors into account when thinking about your product, and rather than just getting a big amount of money making 500 prosthetics and shipping them to Colombia.
Yeah, it's not product push, but it's more like a human-centered design.
Yeah.
So that's the difference.
Yeah.
Looking ahead, I mean, it's clear, even from today's conversation, what you've got, what you have, what you've achieved. I'm very curious I'll use the word need, but we could probably go a different way and say, what are you looking to achieve in the coming short term, anyway? But yeah, what are the parts or the things that have to happen that would really push this initiative forward in the next few years?
Well, on the very short term, I'm traveling to South Africa, basically coming Friday, to attend a conference organized by ISPO, International Society of Prosthetics and Orthotics. And it's like really big, and there's prosthesis makers coming from everywhere, even from Colombia, even the distributor of the Watercasting in Colombia will also come. So it's really big event, and we really hope to speak to more clinicians that would like to get to know the product, but are also willing to think about our decentralization model and how they could have a role in it. So that would be the very short-term goal for the coming weeks. And then in a bit more longer term, we would love to scale to Kenya and to Bangladesh, because we have actually, portion is based there, so we have boots on the ground. Yeah. So we have a team there that can help us find the right contacts and see, because as Sue already mentioned, in Kenya it's also a really centralized system. So we think we can really make a big impact, and only 25% of the people has healthcare insurance. So there's many people that are in need, but they have to pay it for themselves. I think if we would scale to these and then combine the distribution model with the technology, and not only our technology, but there's many more fascinating technology that were invented by other organizations that we could perhaps provide a platform to, that would be amazing.
Yeah, or that you could show how you can implement this, and maybe they will follow your example.
Yeah, but also some of them already exist, so we can just collaborate. Yeah. There's more affordable, good prosthetics that were invented. So hopefully the distribution model provides an opportunity to collaborate.
What I would like to see accomplished in the next month or the next year would be that we have an actual, like a success case. So we've been working now 2 years in Colombia, but I think for us to make this dream of scaling in some other countries, to make it a reality, I really would like to have a strong success case in Colombia, which is the country we're currently working on. So, I mean, for that, there's still a lot of work to do. Part of what we're doing now is developing an app, because if we would like to decentralize and work with the existing infrastructure, we think there could be a way of connecting maybe the main centers with the small centers in the rural areas, and for that, communication is key. And then this app will really help us to establish protocols and processes, so the products and the services are provided in the right way. And this app will help then people using it to follow the right steps into, for example, taking the right measurements, into following the right steps in delivering the prosthetics to the patient. So that is maybe one piece of the big puzzle we are trying to assemble. But as Merel said, it's quite a big task. We are trying to do different things at the same time. But I think we are going the right way. And if everything goes well, but then maybe in 1 year we have our success in Colombia and we can start actually going somewhere, places with this.
And so would you be satisfied once a center opens in a rural area with someone, one of these 19 army clinicians working there to help other people.
That's that's what I'm going after. I really would like to see that happening. Yeah, because I mean, with the prosthetics, we already had that moment where we were waiting for the patient went in the magicas. We were all like just waiting for them. And then when this guy started walking, we already had that moment like, whoa, this guy is walking. So that was awesome.
Yeah.
But then now to put then the magicas in this context to make it work in this like rural lab, I think, and start serving patients in that area, I think that would be then the other, like, it's not a wow moment, just like an amazing moment to see things realizing, like getting more tangible. So,
and it must be such a fulfilling experience to see that you actually achieve or you actually make some difference in someone's life on the other side of the world. It's pretty...
Yeah. The moment she explained, it was actually a professional football player that lost his limb 10 years before. So, and he immediately started playing football. We were like, oh, take it easy. He's like, tuk, 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 you know, like, how do you say?
Oh, yeah.
Like,
juggling?
Like with one leg. We were like, wow.
Oh, wow.
So that was really nice. Yeah.
And this happened in Colombia.
Yeah, and also Nelson, there's also a guy in a rural area, like really far away. And he had some sort of... Yeah, he had such kind of a medical problem with his limb because he was walking on such a horrible prosthetic that, So then I think he always walked with like a lot of pain. Yeah. But I think it really changed his... I think it did change a lot for him.
All right. Well, for people listening, one useful link is thelegbank.org. And there you can find out more about this wonderful project, and we'll be able to follow, as things happen. Thanks for coming to the kitchen table.
Thank you for inviting us.
Yeah. And I would ask you this as well, especially towards the end of an interview here. You do a lot of interviews. I don't know, Susana, if you're also getting into a lot of interviews, but I'd ask you the same question. Is there something that, as much as there are articles and sometimes with cameras and that often you don't get asked, that you feel like you should be able to talk about? Journalists focus on what they focus on, but that there is often missed in media coverage of what you do or what the organization does. It's a really good sign if there's nothing you feel like they missed.
Well, what I like about this interview is that it's 1 hour, and normally it's kind of a summary in 5 minutes. Like
you gotta be.
This is not what I said. It's like squeezed in. Yeah. So I think there was place for details. Often they say, for instance, we make prosthetics, which is not true. And then I'm a bit disappointed. Like, but I explained there is a tool to make. Anyway, so I would say. And then the social entrepreneurial part, it's really important. It's not only about the product, it's about the way how to get it to the people. Yeah. And that's something that people not always ask about. It's just like, you have a product, tell about the product. Okay.
Yeah.
So,
I also found myself writing a quick summary and trying to, and I would write, bringing affordable prosthetics to low-income people in Colombia. And I thought, is that sounding too much like, here? Which is why I should rewrite such things.
Yeah. No, it's good. Yeah, I like it.
Huh. All right. Well, thanks so much, and for sure we'll speak to you again and have you back at the table for all the cool news of good things that you're up to.
Yeah,
thank you so much.
Thanks.
You've been listening to a live edition of Realities Podcast. Like the show or leave a comment on Facebook, Realities Podcast, or follow us on Twitter @RealitiesCast. Subscribe to Realities Podcast in your favorite podcast app and get new shows automatically.
Wherever you think you were, I was nowhere else but with you. All alone. And yet I don't know you, we've never really met. Same nano substances dry up our flesh. We are naked and together by the invisible threads. We are knitted together by the invisible threads. Find me, can't catch me. 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 I know what you're made of. I got the maps of your foreignness. We are knitted and together by the invisible threads. We are unknitted together by the invisible threads. Find me, can't catch me. 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 I'm your old t-shirt, fallen hair. I heard what you whispered to her. I was there, unknitted together to your invisible threads. I am unknitted together to your invisible threads. We are unknitted together to the invisible threads. We are unknitted together to the invisible threads. Find me, can't catch me. 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 One day when we're gone, when you transfer to an old oak, new grass is growing from me. When we don't wonder anymore if we ever met, if we ever were. The breeze will help me touch you weightlessly, with no need, no care, no wish.